Good day everyone, my name is Mark Daniel Camagong and I'm going to discuss about the topic the art of painting. What painting is about? Painting is the application of paint or any other painting materials or mediums on a surface to create a two-dimensional image or colored surface. Painting not only makes use of different materials but also a variety of approaches or style. A finished product is also referred by the word painting. Next is the evolution of painting. First, the prehistoric period. The prehistoric period took place during the 32,000 to 3000 BC. The major characteristics of this period is the Paleolithic period found the early artists creating artworks or artifacts dictated by their circumstances for domestic and religious purposes. The famous artists and their works during this period is in Europe. The oldest known paintings were discovered in the caves of Lascaux in the Ardèche region in France and in Altamira, Spain. Murals found are believed to be part of rituals or rites. This is an example of a cave mural during the prehistoric period. This proves that the history of art, painting in particular, spans through the various times and cultures. Next is the ancient period, which took place in 3000 to 800 BC. The major characteristics of this period is frescoes and other forms of painting were used widely for pottery, homes, tomb decoration, and designing large palaces. This can be seen in the ancient Near Eastern civilizations, Egypt, and the Aegean region. Fresco refers to a technique of mural painting executed upon freshly laid lime plaster. Fresco is a painting done rapidly in watercolor on wet plaster on a wall or ceiling so that the colors penetrate the plaster and becomes fixed as it dries. Here are some of the famous artists and their works during the ancient period. First, the harvest scene, tempera, wall painting in the tomb of Numhotep, Beni Hasan Dynasty 12. Next is bull jumping, wall painting from the palace complex, Knossos, Crete, c. 1550 to 1450 BC. Tempera, also known as egg tempera, is a permanent, fast-drying painting medium consisting of colored pigments mixed with a water-soluble binder medium, usually glutinous material such as egg yolk. Tempera also refers to the painting done in this medium. Next is the Greek period. This period took place during the 500 to 100 BC. The major characteristics of this period are three periods in Greek art history: archaic, classical, and Hellenistic. Early pictorial arts were simple geometric designs and were expressed in fresco and mosaic. Vase painting was a focus in artistic development for many centuries, which includes reinterpretation of mythologies and the use of black figure painting, red figure painting, and later white background decorations. Murals adorned building interiors. Archaic period is the term most frequently used by art historians to denote the period of artistic development in Greece from about 650 to 480 BC. The classical period, on the other hand, corresponds to the most of the 5th to 4th centuries BC. Hellenistic art is the art of the Hellenistic period, generally taken to begin with the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC and end with the conquest of the Greek world by the Romans. Here are some of the famous artists and their works during the Greek period. Next is the Roman period. This took place during the 1st century AD. The major characteristics of this period are the influence by Greek painting but exhibits qualities of its own as evidenced mostly by wall paintings. Sacred frescoes on the walls of catacombs symbolize their unwavering Christian faith. Wall paintings also flourished in villas or houses in Pompeii. Here are some of the famous artists and their works during the Roman period. First, the initiation rites of the cult of Bacchus. Wall painting in the Villa of Mysteries, Pompeii, ca. 50 BC. Garden scene, wall painting from the Villa of Livia at Prima Porta near Rome, late 1st century BC. Next is the medieval period. This took place during the 12th to 14th century AD. The major characteristics of this period are: as Christianity prospered in Europe, religious painting became a tradition. This is normally done on wooden panels. Frescoes and tempera became fashionable, and illuminated manuscripts, however, became the foremost type of painting. Fresco painting flourished during the Romanesque period. Romanesque meaning in Roman manner. Here are some of the examples of the famous artists and their works during the medieval period. First is the Lamentation. Fresco in the Church of Saint Panteleimon, Neresi, near Skopje, Republic of Macedonia, 1164 AD. The next is the Morning of Christ by Giotto Bondone. Fresco in the Cappella Scrovegni, Padua, Italy, c. 1304 to 1306. Next is the Renaissance period. This took place during the early 14th to 16th century. The major characteristics of this period are: this period has been considered by many as the golden age of painting. The period is divided into early Renaissance and high Renaissance. During the early Renaissance, theories on art were developed, new advancements in painting and architecture were made, and the style was defined. The high Renaissance denotes a period that is seen as the culmination of the Renaissance period. The period not only discovered perspective, the wide use of oil as medium, and the use of canvas to replace wooden panels, but the reality itself. Major forms of painting emerged during this period: genre, landscape, portrait, and still life, and from religious to historical to secular and pagan themes. Christian-oriented devotional art became classically humanized. Classical ideals like harmony, balance, and proportion were emulated, as well as the use of contrapposto or counterpoise, a human figure standing with most of its weight on one foot and uses the other leg. This is especially seen in sculptures. Here are some examples of the famous artists and their works during the Renaissance period: the Holy Trinity and the Mona Lisa. Next is the Mannerism period, which took place during 1530 to 1600s. The major characteristics of this period are: Mannerism is said to have dwelt itself in the other reality. Mannerist painter turned against the traditional artistic canon followed by Renaissance painters, distorting the formal repertoire of the new classical pictorial language, contradicting all traditional laws of proportion. For example, Mannerism was born as a reaction to the harmonious classicism and naturalism of the Renaissance. Mannerism aimed to create painting which were not a depiction of this world but with an aura of strange, divine spheres. They used unreal stage-like lighting with dramatic effects of light and dark, trying to distance their representations from real life, such that a religious scene could be transformed into enthralling. Here are some examples of the famous artists and their works during the Mannerism period. First, Madonna with the Long Neck by Parmigianino. Oil on wood can be found in the Uffizi Gallery in 1536. Next is The Last Supper by Tintoretto. Oil on canvas. S. Giorgio Maggiore, Venice, 1591 to 94. Next is the Baroque and Rococo period, which took place during 1600 to 1780. The major characteristics of this period are: Baroque period painted the world in vain splendor. Baroque period produced paintings with dramatic light and shade, violent composition, exaggerated emotion, expressive, dynamic, and restless. Using themes that were strongly influenced by religious movements, Baroque used elaborate effects to appeal directly to the emotions of the people. In other parts of Europe, in Holland for instance, landscape painting flourished as never before while genre painting and still life became autonomous pictorial genres. Rococo, which came after Baroque, favored elegance and decorative charm more than order and symmetry. It was also flavored with frivolity and eroticism. Here are some of the examples of famous artists and their works during the Baroque and Rococo period. First is the Bacchus. Caravaggio, Oil on Canvas, Uffizi Gallery, Florence, 1593. Next is the 3rd of May, 1808. Francisco Goya, Oil on Canvas, Museo del Prado, Madrid, 1814. Next is the Neoclassicism, which took place during 1778 to 1830. The major characteristics of Neoclassicism drew inspirations from the discovery of Pompeii and Herculaneum. It is a revival of classical Greek and Roman themes and styles, a reaction against the excessive Baroque and Rococo styles. It did away with pastel colors and haziness. Neoclassicism echoed expression, which is noble simplicity and quiet grandeur, one sees in the art of antiquity. Neoclassical paintings show a cool, restrained coloration, hard outlines, static compositions, an absence of illusory spatial effects and atmospheric charge, as well as the disregard for the vivid modeling of light and shade. All of these things make the painting sober and keep the observer. Here are some of the famous artists and their works during the Neoclassicism period. First is the Autoforati by Jacques Louis David. Oil on Canvas, Musée du Louvre, 1784 to 1785. Next is La Grande Odalisque by Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres. Oil on Canvas, Musée du Louvre, Paris, 1840. Next is the Romanticism period, which took place during 1800s and 1890. The major characteristics of this period are Romanticism is a reaction against Neoclassicism. It is a style that stresses imaginations, emotions, and the freedom to create. The creative imagination became the basis of all art. The Romantic trend was to reject formalism, control, and intellectual discipline closely adhered to by neoclassicists in favor of individual freedom, rationalism in favor of the subjective experience of emotion and intuition, and the exploration of the natural and fantastic. Images of the world weariness, loneliness, and yearning for nature become apparent in art. Romanticists' preferred genre was landscape painting because they considered nature as a mirror of the soul and a symbol of freedom and boundlessness. They were interested in vision of light that heightened expressiveness. Their paintings are so-called dream pictures as the Romantics tried to achieve an illusory but authentic reproduction of reality. Here are some of the famous artists and their works during the Romanticism period. First is The Raft of Medusa by Theodore Géricault. Oil on Canvas, Musée du Louvre, Paris in 1819. Next is The Hay Wain by John Constable. Oil on Canvas in National Gallery, London, 1821. Next is the Naturalism and Realism period, which took place during 1840 and 1880. The major characteristics of this period are Naturalism records the beauty of everyday. The naturalist painter is interested in achieving a natural, realistic representation of nature based on direct observation. Thus, the naturalists painted their pictures on the spot, in the open air, which is called plein air painting, to do justice to the phenomenon of nature, which is also termed as free observation-based painting. Characteristically, naturalism possessed a relaxed style and clarity of form, was interested in the precise grasping of nature, and later made a plain, unadorned representation of reality which served to open the eyes about the very reality, a socially committed form of naturalism which came to be known as realism. The word realism originated from Gustave Courbet's Le Realisme. Realism has the painter's critical eye on reality. Its central point is the denial of the ideal and aims to paint only what the painter sees, freeing himself from the idealization and casting a sober eye on reality. This is also called as representational painting. Here are some of the examples of the famous artists and their works during the Naturalism and Realism period. First, The Gleaners by Jean-Francois Millet. Oil on Canvas, Musée d'Orsay, Paris in 1857. Next is The Gulf Stream, 1899 by Winslow Homer. Oil on Canvas, The Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York. Next is the Impressionism period, which took place during the 1860s to 1900s. The major characteristics of this period are Impressionism, the most popular movement in Western art, is about two things: depicting modern life and painting in the open air. Impressionism is a recording of the artist's impression of the fleeting effects of light and on the landscape or figures. Using banal subject in his painting, the Impressionist concerned himself with revealing painting as painting defying the academic painter's high regard to achieving the greatest possible similarity between painting and reality, as revealed by his painting technique, which was regarded as crude, unfinished sketches, or what they called impressions. So when we say banal subjects, it is anything that's unoriginal and dull. Impressionists painted with small, fast, rough, broken strokes and patches, using contrasting color mixed loosely on the palette and applied quickly on the canvas to create a natural visual impression, the vision of vibrating light. The Impressionists then were able to depict painting as a mere illusion of reality, an artist. Here are some of the famous artists and their works during the Impressionism period. First, Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe by Edward Manet. Oil on Canvas, Musée d'Orsay, 1863. Next is The Climbing Path, El Hermitage by Camille Pissarro, 1875. This concludes my video lecture. Thank you for listening.